Welcome to the Cocoa Kids Playbook, a podcast by Cocoa Kids. I'm John Jones, Executive Director of Cocoa Kids. All right, well, welcome everyone. This is our second podcast. So the first one was a tremendous success. We're still getting reviews and people calling in. But today we have a special guest. It's Dr. Ruth Fernandez, Executive Director of First Five Contra Costa. I'm John Jones. I'm the Executive Director of Cocoa Kids, and so welcome. Welcome, Ruth.
Thank you, John. I'm really excited to be here and thrilled to be speaker number 2.
Okay, so to kick things off, not everybody's really familiar with First Five. They should be. In full disclosure, I've been on the commission a lot of years, and currently am the chair. So tell us a little bit about First Five.
So, First Fives were established in 1998, about 25 years ago, and they were established through legislation that basically tax any tobacco products in California. It was Proposition 10, and all tobacco cigarette products revenue, sales tax revenue, is given to First Fives. And over time, in the last 25 years, there have been other cigarette or tobacco products like vaping products that have come into the loop. But basically, the goal of First Fives is to establish an infrastructure statewide that will help facilitate a comprehensive and integrated system for early childhood. And so we are an entire statewide network, much like the resource and referral networks are in California. There's a First Five Commission in every county of California. There's a state commission that a lot of people know about, First Five California. And there's our First Five Association, that is our policy and advocacy arm, and also technical assistance.
All right, so your focus is that 0 to 5 window that children are in that early childhood years.
Absolutely. Our goal is to ensure that we are supporting, promoting, and elevating optimal development for children prenatal to 5.
Okay, so our topic today is about why people should care about childcare. So childcare is one of those critical factors within that whole 0 to 5 framework.
Absolutely. Childcare is critical.
Okay, so before we do that, tell us how you got here. What was your journey into the early childhood field?
Wow. Nobody's asked me that in
I
a
like
long
to be the
time.
first at a lot of things. Okay, why are you doing this work?
Well, I am very passionate about education. That's a value, a family value that I have. I'm also an immigrant here in the United States. And one of the things that led me to early childhood was not necessarily by profession, that, later on I went on and got my graduate studies in early childhood, but it was really by my internal values and passion to public service, my belief in the fact that knowledge is power. And so a lot of my professional trajectory has been in government, nonprofit, really looking at how to support families. So as an immigrant myself and as a mom that knew the system, by the time I became a mom, I knew more about the system, but not so much. I recognize, A, parenting is already very difficult and complex. And B, if you are not very familiar with the systems or where to find things or who to ask, who to call, it just like triples, right? The intensity of it. So early childhood is something I sort of walked into when I worked at KQED, doing training and professional development across the Bay Area region. And I fell in love with it. I fell in love with it because it was an opportunity to work with very passionate, dedicated women and men that were really rooted in ensuring young children were cared for, that were nurtured, and that families had access to resources, families like mine. So that's sort of the catalyst for me.
Okay, did you have a specific aha moment? It sounded like you found out parenting was hard, and you found out finding help to help you parent was hard. And so was there that one aha?
Well, I wish I knew a First Five, and I'll confess, I wasn't connected to an R&R when I was a mom. I was fortunate that I had family around me to help me. But later on, when I found out the plethora of resources that our systems have, I was like, how come so many other families don't know about it? Employers don't know about it. Like, no one told me about it, right? I was employed, I was going to school. And so that was my aha. Like, I want to be a part of this system, this network of organizations and professionals that help parents and employers and those connected to the children know what's out there and how they can collaborate to make child education and child development easier.
Yeah. And for those listening, R&R stands for Resource and Referral, Child Care Resource and Referral. And that was the experience I had when my first child was born. We couldn't find a child care provider we felt safe leaving our child with. And we were practically in tears. And someone directed us to a resource and referral agency in Oakland called Bananas. And we walked up this long staircase at the top of this house, and they directed us to five really good sites. And then we were happy ever since. And then when we moved to Contra Costa, I actually walked into the lobby of what was Coco Kids then, which was a child care council. And I found the most wonderful provider, and like you said, there was no. I had to find out through word of mouth. I was asking other
Mhm.
parents, "Is there a place that can tell me where to find?" And they were like, "Yeah, it's right over there." But I didn't see an ad. I didn't. It was kind of like a kept secret, and I didn't know why. So even now, as Coco Kids is the county's resource and referral agency, we've gone to great lengths to make sure people know about us. But like you said, it's still difficult because you have, as a parent, you have other priorities, and you're not necessarily looking for resources where they should be. So now let's talk a little bit about our topic about why people should care about childcare. So, in your opinion, what is not everybody has kids, and the one thing we all have in common is we have been a child at some point in our lives, and we have all had different experiences. So, why, as a society or as a culture, we should care about the state of our care situations?
That is a great question. Well, early on, I'm going to quote one of my teachers used to talk about the family unit as sort of the basic or the center of society. And while not everyone has children, families can look very differently. And so, whether you have one of your own, or you're connected to one, or you know someone who has a child, um, children are part of society. And that's another thing that I'm very passionate about, being a voice for children, because often they can go out and make public comment and speak about all these different policies and needs. But I think childcare has a magnifying effect in society in multiple ways. First of all, with that concept of family being a basic unit for society, families are what give back. They make up the workforce that is, we're all the consumers that actually are part of the market, that are part of the economy. Families are part of the systems, the multiple systems that we work, right, in, or that we are a part of, regardless of our age. So, faith based, churches, temples, schools, and childcare again is the ability to provide care for babies and for young kids up until age 5 or even older, to ensure that they're not only getting what they need, but to ensure that their parents have the ability to be contributing members of society, going back to work and having the peace of mind that they need to do that. So there's a ripple effect about childcare, and it's always been to me kind of an oxymoron kind of concept. Like, if you understand how that ripple effect happens for society, I think childcare would be funded differently everywhere. But
Yeah, well, I agree with that. I think I'm a little bit more shallow in my answer because when I look at kids, I think this is a child that's going to be one day pushing me in a wheelchair, or caring for me, and
That's right.
so I feel like I better do right by them because one day I'm going to depend on them. And I think culturally, or as a society, we are going to. These are our future taxpayers. These are our future mayors, and hopefully, the future president is in a child care center right now, and we just don't know it. So yeah, there's a huge investment we all have in this. What about the economic impact of childcare? You have any thoughts about that?
Absolutely. As I was saying, the availability of childcare in the economy really has a ripple effect in families being able to stay working, in employers of having employees that have the peace of mind, that know that they can be reliable and consistent. Well, I know the work productivity can be a trigger for a lot of things. Employers want to make sure that those in their teams, all their staff in their teams, have again the bandwidth to be creative, innovative, and to contribute to the mission of the organization. And childcare is a big piece of that. When employees have that safety net and have that as a tool, they can just show up so much more fully. They can, they feel supported, and again, that reliability. You know that you can count on employees that will be reliable and that will be there day in, day out.
So access to childcare actually strengthens the workforce.
Absolutely.
Okay. So why do you think it gets overlooked so easily? When you watch the news, you don't hear a lot of stories about children at childcare centers unless something terrible has happened. You don't see a lot of, you know, not a lot of people are talking about what the 5-year-olds are doing versus what the teenagers on their block are doing. Why is our young children and particularly the young children in childcare so easily overlooked?
Well, that kind of connects to another area of my work, and is, when why investing in the first 5 years of life is a big area of under investing globally in the economy. I mean, I think when you ask that question, I think, and I've been in policy tables where the question is, whose responsibility is it, right? Who needs to pay for childcare? Well, whose child is this? Should it be the parent then? This is your child. You pay for the, what your needs and the responsibility of ensuring you have the care. So whose responsibility is another existential question. If the premise is that we understand quality childcare not only helps us have a prepared workforce down the line, 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line. And if we understand that in the short term, childcare allows us to have a workforce that is reliable and committed to the work at time, why are we not supporting it, right? And I think um, I would say my opinion is that one area is just the mindset. I think it's a principle. It's a principle. Um, if if we believe that young kids and the first 5 years are critical, then we would be supporting everything that that goes into that, and childcare would be one piece. The other would be because it's not part of our public structure, necessarily as a nation. If we just think about it for that from that lens, again, ensuring that families have what they need beyond, healthcare, public education, childcare in the first 5 years has always left up to the family's responsibility, right? It hasn't been something that has been part of the infrastructure necessarily. And so we are seeing now a little bit of a mind shift in that childcare is being talked about from the standpoint of it being a critical public service that is needed so that we have better prepared generations in the future, so that we have a workforce that it's healthy mentally, emotionally, and that it's supported. So
So does that it's almost like that's another trail we can travel down, where in our current culture, does it feel like people want the local governments or local institutions to take responsibility of kids, or do you think more families are like, no, these are our kids, we'll take care of them? So that disconnect between what's really society's responsibility and what's really the parents' responsibility. We see it all the time with laws coming up saying, your child should do this, but they don't have to, or it's the parent's choice. How do we kind of reconcile all of that?
I think it should be a shared responsibility.
Okay.
Um, Parents have already a critical role to play as the common denominator in a human being's life from the moment they're born to adulthood. We never stop being parents. And again, we have our public system, our government can have a big role to play in acknowledging in their initiatives of workforce development, ensuring that our workforce is prepared, again, supporting the workforce that are families by having that service available. So I think our current public structure has a role to play. Employers have a role to play, right? So it's a multi-pronged responsibility. So an employment agreement or a relationship is a two-way street. And so I think that as we employ families, employers have an opportunity to meet the employee where they are. They have an opportunity to support their needs in multiple ways, for example. And so one way would be to support more family-friendly practices and to make access to childcare resources more, that proximity more accessible to their own employees.
So
So
would that look like employer-sponsored childcare? And it seemed like there was a time when more employers were willing to do that. And then what pulled us away from that? Was it the cost, or, was it the workforce, or?
yeah, I think that, I mean, definitely the cost is a big element of it. I think maybe, having a shared commitment. I think there's models in the nation of employers who done, have put, a stake on the ground and have been very committed to having employee supported childcare. So it's not that it hasn't been done. It's not as popular as I think it should be. I think that we have great opportunities to expand on and build on some of the models across the nation. But I think that maybe vacillation of, what does this mean for the employer in terms of cost? But if you reframe it as a shared responsibility, I think that it feels more of a collective opportunity where multiple people win: the family, the employee, the employer, and society.
So now in California, we're deep into our budget season. So one of the things I heard the other day that I totally agree with is the budget is really just a reflection of your values and priorities. And I feel like both you and I our whole reason for being here today is to make sure that children are a high priority. In terms of policies, what do you think we can all be doing to help make sure that within our budgets that our legislatures, our lawmakers are making children a high priority?
There are multiple things we could be doing, but I think um, our listeners may or may not know, but I mean, California already has multiple efforts. One is to help make childcare more affordable, right? So there's that part. It's very costly, it's very expensive. it can be even more expensive than a mortgage or the cost of rent and housing for families. So,
And housing is high too.
and housing
Here.
is high, and unemployment is becoming high too. So, I think that so that's one piece in terms of policy and remaining committed, I would say, to policymakers, knowing that we're really addressing systemic root cause, kind of reimagining and restructuring the market of childcare supply. We need to be committed and consistent with those goals. So I think that's one pillar. Continuing with our efforts in California to ensure that childcare is affordable, that their families have multiple opportunities to identify what the best childcare model is, and that those providing childcare can be paid a livable wage. So that right there, in terms of when you think of childcare as a good, as a public good, making sure that that good is attainable and accessible by all families is definitely a North Star that we need to continue to work on.
All right. So it sounds like the challenges are ahead of us in terms of directing it. I think we've been lucky to be in California that is a little bit more forward thinking when it comes to kids. Not as much as I would like it to be, but it's a little bit more forward thinking. And the good example is just your organization with First Five being funded by tobacco dollars. I remember back in like 2001, I had to go to a conference in Atlanta, and someone there asked me to explain First Five to people in Atlanta, and they were so shocked. They were like, it was a tobacco tax, and they were like, this will never happen here because all we have are tobacco farms, and no one's going to tax tobacco for kids. But the downside of it is one of the reasons why we did the tobacco tax is to reduce the amount of smoking in California, which has had a consequence that means that there's less funding available for children's program. It's a good thing, fewer smokers. It's a bad thing. There's less dollars to do that. So you're working toward that, making kids a priority in the budget is going to be really, really critical. So is there anything, that comes to mind after this short discussion? You and I often have a lot of these discussions impromptu. So this gave us an opportunity to actually, put it on a recording, and we'll have to live with it the rest of our lives. But is there anything you wanted to add to this whole thing about why people should care about childcare, or even just the state of our youngest members?
Yes. Well, I'm really glad you're doing this because you would think that after 30, I've been in this field now, gosh, I feel very old all of a
You don't have
sudden,
to date yourself, but you look good. You're
more
fine.
than close to 3 decades.
Yeah.
And if you think about, and I know many others who have, you know, outnumbered the number of years I've been in this profession, but there's multiple decades, right, where I think as a nation, there's been a big recognition about there's generational knowledge of the importance of the first 5 years, the impact on brain development, and the return of investment, right, in the first 5 years for the entire society. You would think that when we talk about children's issues like childcare, for example, there would be, again, it would be sort of a kind of an oxymoron kind of question, like, really? Like, it shouldn't be an afterthought. I still find myself having to raise my hand in multiple tables and say, what about childcare? So I was recently in a board of supervisors meeting, and they were talking about building, um, revitalizing the economy in the county, right? And bringing more jobs, especially in East Contra Costa, where we have a desert of organizations. Guess what? No one mentioned childcare. No one talked about it.
Is that because it's not top of mind, or?
If I asked, I'm sure, and I know many of the people that were on the panel, I know they care about kids. But I think it's not a natural element of infrastructure that people think about. So in that sense, you and I have our work cut out for ourselves. Where we still have some ways to go. And as I said earlier, I guess to kind of summarize my insight in a different way, while we know, there's enough literature on return of investment, it's not thought of as part of the fabric of public services. Childcare is still not a natural ingredient when it comes to quilting, putting together structures of neighborhoods and communities that can become vibrant and productive. And so we have to continue to do our job to ensure that childcare is a constant element of community development, of imagining communities that are healthy and thriving and joyful and happy. All the things we've talked about right now go into that. So I think, in short, while we know what the benefits are, it's really not seen as something. It's seen more as an individual thing that a parent should be worried about. It's not really connected enough, not yet, to fabrics of government and those makers putting together developing plans for communities.
Right. It's always feels like the long-term benefits so far away that people are short-sighted. I used to blame MTV and the internet, that our attention span is so short that we want to see results immediately. And the real payoff for early childhood usually comes about 20 years later, and I don't think we have the attention span for that. And with term limits, neither do our lawmakers. They want to see things immediately. But you're right, but if you think about it, we should be seeing a return on this every year because kids grow up. The 5-year-olds of today or the 10-year-olds of tomorrow or the 20-year-olds and the 30-year-olds. And you and I both used to be kids. So here's the payoff right now. Right. So,
Absolutely.
okay.
And we have some opportunities, if I may say one more thing.
No, go ahead.
We have seen a couple of, just in this legislative session, and we have now tangible examples of lawmakers, female lawmakers, that are actually, asking Congress to be more flexible and widen supports to them so that they can actually exercise their duty and be able to be there as moms that just gave birth to a child or that couldn't give their vote and represent their constituents enough. So I was just like, yes, that's just so great that we have an assembly member, a congresswoman, out and speaking to Congress about, I was not able to cast my vote. I was not able to exercise all my duty to my constituents because I just became a mom of my number 2 child. And I was not able to be here with my baby or have the support that I needed. And they did a couple of the other lawmakers that I've seen give testimony. They also acknowledged that they did carry a lot of privilege, right? Even themselves, and even with that, it's still very challenging. Even with the privilege that is different everywhere for every family. So I just wanted to highlight that because I think I don't want to
So
end
that
on a
might be
downer. There's
so that might be the tipping point that gets everything else started, is that it's really coming home that more people are experiencing the incredible need for a structured early childhood system, the importance of childcare, all these things. When you become something personal, people, it's like that's their aha moment. They go,
yes.
this is why this is important. This is why it's needed. So that's excellent. So I want to thank you for coming in today. I appreciate all your thoughts. And so what did we learn today? We learned that the economic benefits us all. If people are able to put their child in a safe and clean environment and be confident in the person caring for them, they can do their jobs better. We talked a little bit about policymakers making children a priority, just not just in word of mouth, but also within the budget. And then I like that last example where the need for childcare is actually shaping how government works. So those are bright spots, and hopefully that give us something to look forward to. All right. But thank you, Ruth, for coming in today. It was great talking to you. and I'm sure we'll have many more
Likewise.
conversations. If more than 5 people listen, then we'll be on a roll. Okay.
That's
All
right. Well,
right.
thank you for inviting me,
Yeah.
John. It's always
Okay.
great to chat with you.
All right. Thank you. This podcast was brought to you by Coco Kids. Thank you to Letty Cuizan, executive producer, and Faith Donathan, line producer.